Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into something a little different, a little more personal, maybe.
Hmm.
You guys sent in a lot of stuff about, well, feeling insecure in relationships.
Yeah, that's a common one.
It is, right.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is we've got, well, your personal notes, obviously,
Right.
but also a clip from Pretty Woman.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. You wouldn't think, I mean, it's a rom-com, right?
Right.
You wouldn't think there's a lot of, like, deep psychology there.
Yeah, not necessarily the first place you'd go for relationship advice.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But, maybe there's something there.
Maybe. A lot of these movies, even the lighthearted ones, they tap into those universal relationship dynamics, like that push and pull that happens when one person wants to get close and the other one's kind of backing away.
Yeah. Like emotional tag or something, but not fun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's something you've been experiencing based on your notes.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely been on my mind lately.
Yeah.
So let's see if we can make sense of this whole insecure attachment thing.
Okay, let's do it. So, in this Pretty Woman clip, we've got Edward, Richard Gere's character.
Super successful businessman, right?
Right. Got it all. The charm, the money, the penthouse.
But definitely gives off that emotionally unavailable vibe.
Totally. He's the classic avoidant partner. Keeps everyone at arm's length.
Yeah. And then we've got Vivian, Julia Roberts.
Who shakes up his world.
Exactly. And of course, classic Hollywood ending. He has this big transformation. They fall in love, the end. But it makes you wonder, right? Is it really that easy to just change? Like, can someone go from completely shut down to fully open and vulnerable just because of, I don't know, a whirlwind romance?
It's a great question. I mean, in real life, it's usually not that simple.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I love a good love story, but even I'm a little skeptical of those fairy tale endings.
Right, because attachment patterns, they run deep.
So if it's not as simple as the movies make it seem, then what's really going on? Like, what's happening beneath the surface when we get stuck in these cycles of, wanting connection, but then pushing away or feeling insecure?
Okay, yeah. To really understand that, we need to go beyond the basic definitions of anxious and avoidant attachment and look at the nuances.
The nuances. Okay. You mentioned something about subtypes.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Okay.
like, within the avoidant category, you've got two main subtypes.
Yeah.
You've got dismissive avoidant
Mhm.
and fearful avoidant.
Okay, so what's the difference?
Well, someone who's dismissive avoidant might kind of downplay the importance of relationships, prioritize their independence. They might seem aloof, self-sufficient.
Like they don't need anyone.
Exactly. That sounds a lot like Edward at the beginning of Pretty Woman.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
He's all about business deals and keeping things casual.
Right, right. Now, fearful avoidant is a little different. They might actually crave closeness, but they're terrified of getting hurt.
So they kind of want it, but they're also scared of it.
Yeah, it's like a push and pull within themselves.
Oh, I see. That makes sense.
They might send mixed signals, want connection one minute, push you away the next.
So it's more complex than just wanting to be alone.
Absolutely. And these nuances they're key to understanding how these patterns actually play out, especially when you add in the anxious attachment style.
Okay, so how does that fit in?
Well, the anxious attachment style, they're driven by this deep fear of abandonment, a constant need for reassurance.
Always looking for signs that their partner's going to leave.
Right, exactly. Overanalyzing every word, every action.
Oh, yeah. Reading between the lines. Exhausting.
It is. It's exhausting.
And it probably just pushes the avoidant partner further away, right?
Often, yeah. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more they cling, the more the avoidant partner might withdraw.
It's like that saying, what we resist persists.
Exactly. And this brings us to this really fascinating concept that your book talks about, the invisible known.
The invisible known. Okay. Sounds kind of mysterious.
It is kind of. Think of it like this. We all have these deeply held beliefs about ourselves, about relationships. A lot of them formed in childhood.
Yeah.
And they operate under the surface, like invisible scripts that guide our behavior.
So we're kind of autopilot, following these old patterns, even when they're not working for us anymore.
Exactly. And that's where our early experiences, especially with our caregivers, really come into play.
You're saying our childhoods are still impacting our adult relationships, even if we don't realize it.
Absolutely. Let me give you an example. Imagine a child who grows up with a parent who's emotionally unavailable, right? They might learn that love is conditional, that they have to be perfect to be loved.
That they can't show their true selves.
Right. And those experiences create these invisible knowns that shape how we approach relationships as adults.
So someone who didn't get that consistent emotional responsiveness might develop that anxious attachment style, always seeking validation and fearing rejection.
That's exactly it. It's like carrying these invisible wounds.
Wow, that's powerful. But what about the avoidance side? How does that develop?
Well, think about it this way. What if a child experienced closeness as overwhelming, intrusive? They might learn to associate intimacy with discomfort.
And so they seek distance to feel safe.
Exactly. It's not necessarily that they don't want connection. It's that they've learned to connect it with these negative feelings.
Oh, that makes sense. So understanding this is key to breaking free.
It is. It's about understanding those underlying dynamics.
Okay, I'm getting this, but it's also kind of overwhelming.
Hmm.
Knowing why this is happening doesn't automatically make it easier to change, right?
Hmm.
Like, I can't go back and rewrite my childhood.
That's true. You can't change the past, but you can change how you respond to it.
And that's where self-awareness comes in.
Exactly. Self-awareness is the first step.
Because until we see those patterns, those invisible knowns, we're just going to keep hitting the same wall over and over again.
It's like trying to navigate a maze in the dark.
We need to turn on the lights. But how do we actually do that? How do we actually cultivate that self-awareness?
That's where those exercises you sent in come in.
Okay, yeah. Those sound really promising.
They are. They're really practical.
Okay, so what stood out to you the most from this initial kind of exploration?
I think what really struck me was, well, this whole idea that our past experiences, they can have such a huge impact on our relationships today.
Yeah, like those old wounds are still echoing.
Exactly.
And now I'm even more curious to see how those exercises can help us heal.
Me too. So, are you ready to dive into some self-discovery?
I am. Let's do it. All right, let's get practical. We talked about self-awareness, but how do we actually put that into practice? Those exercises from the book seem like a good place to start.
Yeah, for sure. One of the most helpful ones focuses on identifying your emotions, especially in those heated moments when your attachment anxieties are kind of flaring up.
Okay, so instead of just reacting, we hit pause
Hmm.
and actually notice what's happening inside.
Exactly. It's about tuning into those subtle shifts. Like, are you feeling your heart racing, palms sweating, that knot in your stomach?
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling.
And then there are the thoughts, right? They start spiraling.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like they take over.
Totally. They don't care about me. I'm going to get hurt again, all that stuff.
Yeah, all those fun thoughts.
So this exercise, it's about creating space between the trigger, whatever set it off, and your response. The book suggests keeping a journal.
Oh, interesting. So write down what happened, how my body felt, what I was thinking.
Exactly. Like in your notes, you mentioned feeling anxious when your partner doesn't respond to texts right away.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one for me.
Okay, so imagine that scenario. You send a text, an hour goes by, no reply. What are you feeling in your body?
Well, I can feel like my chest getting tight, and I keep checking my phone over and over.
Yeah, and what about those thoughts? What's that inner voice saying?
Oh, it's like a broken record of what ifs. What if
Okay.
they're ignoring me? What if they don't care?
And that's it, right? That's the key. Labeling those emotions. Are you anxious, scared, angry?
Putting a name to it, okay.
Yeah. It helps you understand them, gives you more control.
So instead of just reacting out of fear, I can say,
Mhm.
okay, I'm feeling anxious right now. What's going on here?
Exactly. You start to explore those anxieties with a little curiosity.
Okay, yeah. Like, is there another way to see this situation?
Right. What assumptions are you making? Is this a familiar pattern?
That's helpful. I think I often just jump to the worst case scenario.
It's common, especially when those invisible knowns are at play.
Right, like those old beliefs are whispering in our ear.
And we believe them without question.
So question those whispers. Got it.
Yes. And that leads to the next exercise, challenging those negative thoughts.
Ah, yes. Because those anxieties, they come from those deep-seated beliefs.
Exactly. Those beliefs about ourselves, about relationships.
Like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of love, that whole thing.
Right. And this exercise is about exposing those beliefs, putting them on trial.
Ooh, I like that. Put them on trial.
Write down the thought, then examine the evidence, for and against.
Okay, so let's say the thought is, my partner doesn't really love me because they didn't text back. What would the evidence look like?
Right. So you'd ask yourself, how do they usually show love? Do they make an effort to spend time with me, support my goals?
Like a relationship investigation.
It is. And often when we do this, we see those negative thoughts aren't actually true.
It's like the illusion disappears.
Exactly. We
Yeah.
take back our power.
Okay, I'm liking this. But what about when those anxieties are just, like, so intense, it's hard to think straight?
That's where self-compassion is so important.
Right, because beating ourselves up just makes it worse.
Totally. It adds fuel to the fire. So think about it. Imagine a friend came to you feeling anxious, insecure.
Okay.
What would you say to them?
Well, I wouldn't judge them. I'd listen, try to understand, remind them of their good qualities.
Exactly. And that's how we need to treat ourselves.
We're allowed to feel anxious.
We are. We're all works in progress. We deserve compassion, even when we mess up.
Giving ourselves permission to be human,
That's it. It's not about denying the anxiety. It's about holding it with compassion.
that makes sense.
And that's where the real change happens. We stop fighting those insecure parts of ourselves.
We can start to understand them.
Yes. Okay, so we've covered identifying emotions, challenging thoughts, and self-compassion. What about that third exercise, mentalizing?
Oh yeah, mentalizing. Tell me more about that.
Well, it's basically the ability to understand our own minds and the minds of others.
Like trying to see the world through their eyes.
Exactly. With curiosity, not judgment.
Sounds challenging, especially when I'm feeling triggered.
It can be, but the book has some great tips.
Okay.
One is just to pay attention. Really tune in to your partner's cues.
Their tone of voice, body language, all of that.
Exactly. And ask open-ended questions.
Like what?
Can you tell me more about what you're feeling? What made you react that way?
Like an invitation to share.
It is. And when we feel seen, understood, it creates safety.
Safety and connection, okay.
Yeah, that's the foundation.
This is amazing, but it sounds like it takes a lot of practice.
It does. It's a skill.
And we're not going to get it right every time.
Of course not. There will be slip-ups.
Oh, I'm sure of it.
But that's okay. Be kind to yourself. It's like learning anything new.
The rewards are worth it, though, right? To be able to handle those situations with more calm, more understanding.
Absolutely. It transforms your relationships and you feel more confident.
I'm loving this deep dive. I feel like I have a whole new set of tools now.
I'm glad to hear that. And remember, this is just the start.
The more we practice, the better we get.
Exactly. Self-awareness, self-compassion, mentalizing, communication.
All working together.
Yes. So how about we apply this to some real-life situations?
Okay, yeah, because sometimes it's hard to bridge that gap between the theory and actually putting it into practice.
Totally. Let's look at your notes. What scenario feels the most challenging right now?
Okay, so I've been thinking about some of the scenarios in my notes, and there's one that keeps coming back to me.
Oh, yeah. Which one?
It's the plans change dilemma.
Ah, the dreaded canceled plans. Yeah, that's a big one, especially for people with, anxious attachment.
It is. It's like a trigger.
Tell me about it. What happens? What's the situation?
Okay, so we make plans, right, to hang out or whatever. And then at the last minute, something comes up on their end and they have to cancel.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's legit, like a work thing or whatever.
Sure.
But sometimes it's something that feels less, I don't know, important, I guess. Like a friend's party.
Right. So it makes you question where you stand on the priority list.
Exactly. And that's when my mind goes into overdrive.
What happens? What are you thinking?
It's not good. I instantly jump to conclusions. They're blowing me off. They don't actually care. The whole 9 yards.
Those abandonment fears kicking in?
Time. It's like my inner child is having a meltdown.
Makes sense. And how do you usually react when this happens?
Oh, not well. I either get mad, like really lash out, or I just shut down completely.
So you're reacting from that place of hurt?
Yeah, and then I feel terrible afterward because I know I'm not being fair.
Right. It's not your best self.
Not even close. So this is where, I guess, mentalizing comes in.
Exactly. It's about taking a step back from those immediate reactions and trying to, see things from their side.
Okay, so instead of assuming they're, like, intentionally trying to hurt me,
Right.
I try to see their perspective.
Yeah. Like if it's a work emergency, maybe remind yourself their job is unpredictable.
True. Doesn't mean they don't care about our plans.
Right. And even if it's not work, they still have their own life, their own stuff going on.
Okay, yeah. Their world doesn't revolve around me.
It doesn't, and they're allowed to have their own needs, their own priorities.
It's not a personal attack.
Exactly. Mentalizing helps you see that.
Okay, but what about when it feels like, I don't know, like a pattern?
Yeah.
It's always something else coming up instead of our time together.
That's a valid concern. How do you differentiate between, healthy boundaries and being taken for granted? That's tough.
It is.
This is where communication is key.
Okay, so I should say something.
Yeah. But remember, mentalizing doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. It's about approaching the conversation with understanding, not blame.
So instead of saying, like, you always choose them over me, I could say,
Yeah.
I feel hurt when our plans change so often. Can we talk about finding a balance?
Perfect. Statements.
Keeps it about my experience.
Exactly. And you're opening up the conversation, not shutting it down.
And hopefully we can actually find a solution together.
That's it. That's what secure relationships are all about.
This is making so much sense.
Yeah.
Mentalizing really can help with those tricky situations.
It can, but remember, it's a
We're
practice.
not going to be perfect at it,
Right. And that's okay. Be patient with yourself. It takes time.
like learning a new dance or something.
Exactly.
But it's worth it, right? To be able to handle these things with more, I don't know, grace.
It is. And it's not just about your relationships. It's about how you feel about yourself, too.
Wow, this deep dive has been incredible. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of things.
That's great to hear. And remember, this is just the beginning. The more you practice these tools, self-awareness, self-compassion, mentalizing, and clear communication, the better your relationships will be.
I'm feeling so inspired. I can't wait to start putting this into practice.
That's what we like to hear. And to everyone listening, remember that secure love is possible. It starts with understanding yourself, having compassion for yourself and your partner, and being willing to grow together.
Beautiful. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep loving.
See you next time.